So you know the Bible verse in Genesis where it talks about Eve being Adam's helper, and it makes some of us cringe and can feel really misogynistic and gross. Well, there might be a reason for that. It's actually been very wrongly used and it's been very misunderstood over the years. So this is the actual verse. I'm going to read it to you guys. When God created woman, it says in Genesis 2:18, God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helpmeet fit for him." Some other translations say, "I shall make a helper fit for him. I will make a fitting helper for him. I will make an aid fit for him. I will make him a helpmate. I will make a suitable partner for him, and I will make him a helper comparable to him." So it's obvious that these translations have interpreted this as Eve being Adam's helper, which is often understood as being secondary, subordinate, less than, etc. And actually that couldn't be further from the truth. Eve is given to Adam as his Ezer Kenegdo, which is the Hebrew translation to helpmeet. And it means something far more powerful than just helper. It actually means lifesaver. And this phrase is only used elsewhere of God when you need him to come through for you desperately. Ezer Kenegdo means warrior, strong help, man's equal, and man's perfect match. It's the picture of two parts of equal weight leaning against each other. To break this down further, the first word help comes from the Hebrew word ezer, which means to rescue or to save or to be strong, depending on the pronunciation. This word originally had two roots, each beginning with different guttural sounds. One meant power and the other meant strength. And also this word wasn't really just like thrown around. In the Old Testament, the word Ezer was only used 21 times, but each time its use was significant. We can roughly divide the scriptures into three different categories in the ways that Ezer was used. And I'll go ahead and put the list of scriptures on the screen as well if y'all wanted to screenshot them. Ezer is used twice when referring to Eve in Genesis, 3 times when referring to nations on whom Israel calls for military aid, but probably the most interesting and profound use is when it's used 16 times to describe God as Israel's helper. In many of the passages, it's used in parallelism to words that clearly denote strength or power. And some examples of these are Psalm 121:1, "I look up my eyes to the hills, from where does my help or my Ezer come?" Deuteronomy 33:26 says, "There is none like the God of Jeshurun, the rider of the heavens in your strength," or Ezer, "and on the clouds in his majesty." And then Deuteronomy 33:29 says, "Blessed are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord. He is the shield of your strength," or your Ezer, "and the sword of your majesty." Ezer means strength or power. Whenever it is used in parallelism with words for majesty or other words for power such as Oz or Uzzo. In fact, the presence of two names for one king, Azariah and Uzziah, both referring to God's strength, makes it abundantly clear that the root, Ezer meaning strength, was known in Hebrew. This was like clearly translated back then. Culturally, we've just messed it up. What's really cool and what all these verses have in common is that Ezer is consistently used in a military context. Israel seeks military aid from her neighbors. God is his people's shield and defense. And like quoting from the Bible, better than chariots and horses, standing sentry watch over his people. Ezer is a warrior. And the craziest part is that God calls himself or refers to himself as Ezer, as does he to women and Eve. So this is a position of honor. This is a position of strength. As women, we should feel very empowered by this and very seen by this. And we also see over and over again in scripture, even Jesus himself obviously saw women as being very valuable. Okay, so moving on to the second half of that word, help meet, we're gonna look at the word meet, which is translated in Hebrew to the word kenegdo, meaning opposite as to him or corresponding as to him. A strong warrior complementary to man. A woman is no better and no less than a man. Men and women are equally and uniquely created. Kenegdo indicates that the Ezer is the man's match, literally as in front of him. And a visual example would be like as the yin is to the yang symbol. And when they come together, it's like this perfect match. Neither superior nor inferior, but equal. So it forms one half of a polarity. Women are to man as the South Pole is to the North Pole. God created his daughters to be Ezer warriors with our brothers. Eve was sent to break Adam's loneliness by soldiering with him wholeheartedly and at full strength for God's kingdom. And the strength that God brings as Ezer to his people should indicate to us that as Ezers, we must be strong, resourceful, alert, and proactive to the cries of the needy and the oppressed. Ruth and the Proverbs 31 woman are both called women of valor, which is also, again, military language. Paul rallies believers, both men and women, to put on the full armor of God in preparation to do battle with the evil one, reminding us that our battle is not against flesh and blood enemies. So thinking of the Ezer as a warrior is entirely consistent with how scripture views us. For those of us who are married or who will be married, as wives, we are called to be our husband's strongest greatest ally in pursuing God's purposes, and his first roadblock when he veers off course. Focus on the wife as her husband's helper has led to the belief that God has given primary roles and responsibilities to men and secondary supporting roles to women. And it's led to practices that communicate that women are second-class citizens at home and in the church. And none of this is true. Therefore, after all of this, we can conclude that Genesis 2:18 be translated as, I will make a power or strength corresponding to man. The second word in the Hebrew expression found in this verse should be rendered equal to him. If so, then God makes for the man a woman fully his equal and fully his match. The woman was never meant to be an assistant or a helpmate to the man. The word mate actually slipped into the English since it was so close to the Old English word meet, which means fit to or corresponding to the man, which comes from the phrase that likely means equal to. What God has intended then was to make a power or strength for the man who would in every way correspond to him or be his equal. So I hope this little Bible study encouraged and empowered you.